This conference will now be recorded.
Item 1 on the agenda is consent agenda items, approving the minutes, statement of bills, and a special event permit for the BK 5K run walk.
Make a motion to approve consent agenda items. Second.
We have a motion from Councilman Shriver, a second from Councilman Adcox. Will the clerk please call roll?
Yes.
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 Item number 2 is requests or comments from the public. This might be a little bit confusing, so I'll give some explanation. We have both a public comment time and a public hearing on tonight's agenda. So if your public comment is just something in general, then that would be during this time. If your comment is in regard to the annual budget and exceeding the revenue neutral rate, that'll be in item number 3. And so you're welcome to speak at both or either. Just wanted to let you know, if you are here for public comment, you'll have 3 minutes. You'll start with your name and address. When your time's winding down, I'll give you a signal to wrap it up. If anyone would like to share during the public comments, now would be the time.
Good evening, Steve Johnson, 507 High Street, Edwardsville. I got 2 small items here. I would like to request a speed limit sign on High Street. I know it's supposed to be posted at 25. We have several children now up in that area. We have lots of pets up in that area, and it's become a raceway for delivery trucks, and all these people keep coming up to a dead-end street that don't belong. I think there's a lot of confusion, but a lot of speeding beyond 25 miles. So I'd even put them up to maybe the 20-mile-an-hour signs. I'd like to put it 20 because of the fact that we've got too many kids playing outside. Secondly, has there ever been a consideration to put a off-leash dog park area in our park? Because we actually take our dogs to Bonner Springs a lot. It's good to be dogs to be social with other animals, and we don't have that. And I would like to see a portion of it. Right now, they share big and little dogs. It's usually policed by the people that run there. I'd like to see.
Thank you. Anyone else during the public comment? Okay, there being none, we'll move on to conducting a public hearing to consider exceeding the revenue neutral rate developed by Wyandotte County for the fiscal year 2026 annual budget. This will be similar. You'll have up to 3 minutes, starting with your name and address. I'll give you the signal when to wrap up if time's winding down. First, I'll need a motion to open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second. We have a motion and from Councilman Shriver, a second from Councilman Adcox. Will the clerk please call roll?
Yes.
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 If anyone would like to share during our public hearing, now would be the time. Okay. And then just remember to start with your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Robert Niffen. My address is 10323 Richland Avenue here in Edwardsville. And I wanted to address the property tax statement that I received from the county that shows that property taxes for folks that live here in the city of Edwardsville is going up approximately 10%, which is a pretty steep increase when it comes to property taxes. For those of us that are now retired, living on fixed incomes, this year alone, my income dropped 40% just from retiring. So, you know, I understand that there's probably nobody from the county or the school district or the library here or anything, but there is a portion that this council can address as far as the property taxes that is collected by the city of Edwardsville. And I would just encourage you that you look at that number. You know, for me personally, it's $79.31. Okay, a tank of gas, maybe a movie, realistically. You know, but that's not everybody's here in Edwardsville can really afford that. So I would just suggest that, you know, when you're discussing the budget, that you look at that tax levy, and of course, by ordinance, you can pass to actually lower your tax levy and lower our property tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, Susan Eubanks, 208 South 110th Street, Edwardsville. And I am opposed to exceeding the revenue neutral. I too am retired, and it seems like everything is going up, and just, you know, concerned about where this will end. I am a little confused. If you could clear up something. When I look at this page and it has state, county, Edwardsville, etc., and then over clear at the right side it says percent, and I don't understand. Are all these added together, or like am I just under Edwardsville part? Um, yeah. Is that clear? Is my question clear?
I can respond to that after,
Okay.
but not during your public comment.
Okay. Okay. Um, and, you know, I'm aware that when taxes go up, it's harder on businesses, harder for them to hire people. You know, they have to raise their prices, and some of them, I've talked to someone who is probably going to go out of business because his taxes have gone up so much. He's not here in Edwardsville, but you know, if taxes are lower, I mean, this is, you know, then businesses can hire more people. They can, when they, you know, they sell stuff and collect sales tax, and if they aren't in business, there's a source of revenue. So anyway, I am concerned about businesses as well as. Thank you.
Steve Johnson, 507 High Street. I'm definitely against this. If because of what's going on in our county, if we went revenue neutral on my house alone, I'd pay $350 a year. Sound like a whole lot, but since we're not going to, it jumps to a little over $700. Now most of that change is because they came by, decided my house was worth a hell of a lot more than it was last year, I guess. And I've seen the next door neighbor go through the same problem. This whole idea of give me a line of, excuse me, the expression of line of BS about bill levies. Our problem is how we're getting taxed to death because they feel they need a larger value on our house. Take a look at revenue neutral as of September 5th report. 62 counties in this state say revenue neutral. So why does this county have to jump so high? Granted, I wasn't able to go to the county one because of other things I had involved with. But it's unbelievable what's going on out there, and we're just seems like everybody just shrugging their shoulders and say, "Oh, that's the way it is." Sadly enough, if we had a good group of constitutional lawyers that could step up to the plate and help us as residents in state, we could get rid of this so-called payment or something else. We're actually making a rent payment to the county and the state and all these other entities for property that we bought. Our forefathers didn't figure that into the equation. So why do a person work their butts off all their lives, pay off their place, and still have to make rent payments because the county needs money? Another thing that irritates me is, and I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me and my wife, but we're paying so much for educational schools, libraries, which my library is right here. I'll never set foot in another library because they can't keep up to technology. The reason why I'll never deal with schooling is I'll never have grandchildren. My two siblings decide they're not going to have children, so why am I getting nabbed by the school here $1,300 a year for education stuff that I don't need? I've talked to the county about this. Why should I pay for jail I don't use? Granted, there's services that need to be paid, but I need to be paying as I move forward, and I need those services. I think it's ridiculous, and
Thank you. Anyone else for the public hearing before we close? Is there a motion to close public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second. We have a motion from Councilman Shriver, a second from Councilman Adcox. Will the clerk please call roll?
Yes.
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 Item number 4. I think there were a couple of questions that we can address at the end of the meeting. We just can't do right during the public comment, so I'll try to do that later. Item 4 on the agenda is here a staff presentation on the fiscal year 2026 budget.
Yeah, Mayor, I'm sorry, if you moved on. Number 3, we need to adopt the revenue neutral rate.
Oh, that wasn't on, it's not listed on item 3.
And consider adopting resolution 2025-14.
It's not on the agenda, but we're adopting it this evening. Yes.
We voted to pass, to exceed revenue neutral and not exceed 39 mils like 2 meetings ago. So what's going on here
Well, I
now?
think the verbiage is, you indicated to the county that you were going to exceed the revenue neutral, not to exceed that specific rate.
Well, kind of. July,
Yes.
We're voting again whether or not to exceed, and then we'll adopt the actual budget at the following meeting on the 22nd.
we don't need to amend this agenda because it's not on there.
I'd like to amend it because number 3 doesn't reference resolution.
So first we need to amend an agenda and that will take four votes. But if we're adding a vote, we need to add that to amend the agenda to add consideration of resolution. Would you tell us exactly what that motion would need to be to amend the agenda to add that?
I guess.
Or do we not need to? Right, and that was, I mean, to me, I feel like it's already adding it at this point when we posted the agenda. Unless people dug through the paperwork, they wouldn't know we're voting on it tonight anyway. And so we could add it now, but it doesn't really help our public know exactly what we're doing. So it's kind of a little bit of a,
This is the public hearing that everyone had a chance to come share their views.
yes.
I think that if there's a question of whether people had public notice of when you're going to take action on revenue neutral, this would be the day that I think is the most fairly published.
They would expect.
They would expect. The budget is a separate consideration. You can always decide to adopt a budget, even if you give your intent to exceed tonight through action. You can always decide to adopt a budget of anything less than 39 mills.
So I think just for policy's sake, transparency's sake, we should amend the agenda if we're going to vote on something that's not on the agenda. We need to amend to add it. And so then we can amend to
I
consider.
do think you stated it correctly, is that we've had open and closed public hearing. You've accomplished that piece of it. If I understood our attorney correctly, you can take up the resolution at the next date. Is that correct? That's the way I see it. Or do you think it's better to take it up now that we've had that?
The other issue with this is that September 20th is the deadline to have it. And if the council knows now that it's not going to exceed revenue neutral, then it's a non-issue. Worst case scenario, hitting the statute wrong.
What about the people that got this agenda Friday and that wasn't on the agenda and we've already opened and closed the public hearing? So they might have had some different ammunition to bring up here, so maybe a different opinion about this. So I'm not, this should have been on the agenda Friday. This is not transparent to these people sitting out here, as far as I'm concerned.
I think the statute speaks for itself. Public notice. enforce statute links to as your counsel. I'm just trying to make sure you have the widest amount of options.
Does it say anywhere on here that we're gonna have action on this though, on this agenda? It doesn't. Not that I'm seeing. And I don't think that's fair to these people sitting out here that came to this meeting on a public hearing for something that's this sensitive and important. That's my opinion. It's never easy to vote on these budgets sitting up here at this dais anyway. I don't think we need to have this kind of confusion thrown into it.
Well, I'm sorry to delay this, but I would like to look at the statute.
Yeah, let's look at it.
Why
I
don't
think
we hear the
I think
budget
it needs to be
presentation?
delayed for the transparency issue of it.
Yeah. Yeah, let's move on to item number 4, and then if we need to amend to add a vote, then we can do that.
Yeah, there's no motion for action, so let's just, not even, you don't have to formally table that, you're just moving it in the agenda in the same,
To item 4.
so for research for the.
Okay, and then he'll come back to us before the meeting's over and let us know. Okay. Item number 4. Here's staff presentation on the 2026 budget.
Mayor, thank you. I'll yield to Mr. Doug Gerber.
Everybody, good evening. This is likely our last budgeting discussion. We've talked about, at least for this year, many times. We've been having these conversations since May. A brief reminder of what the calendar has looked like. Brief reminder of what our budget priorities have been. And tonight, what I wanted to talk through was I wanted to try to be responsive to what the governing body indicated at their last meeting. So I have 2 things that I want to present. First is what sort of efficiencies staff has enacted over the last year or so to help try to mitigate some of our budgetary issues. And then the second thing is to take a look, basically a 10-year snapshot, going 4 or 5 years back with audited numbers, and then doing a guess, an educated guess about what things might look like 5 years from now. So we'll go through that with the general fund and a couple of the other major funds. But I thought I'd start with the budgeting and procedural efficiencies that we've tried to accomplish, and I just basically broke it down between various the 4 major departments in the general fund. And I don't know that I need to necessarily read all these, but I'll maybe just do a couple highlights. We have had multiple personnel vacancies in the administrative area. Those are typically for long periods of time handled by staff internally, so that we're not rushing right out and hiring someone, and so that helps mitigate some staff hirings. I would say utility billing best practices. We're going to be going to every month billing. That's going to make things more consistent. Folks are going to get them in a more timely fashion, and most importantly, it doesn't allow customers to get 2 to 4 to 6 months behind if we're getting those, and so that's just going to be quite a bit more efficient. As you know, we've looked at a lot of contracts and trying to change those that did not favor the city. The example we've been there's the trash contract. There's certainly been others that will make us more efficient. Certainly improved budget and financial practices. We have weekly staff discussions about the budget, where everyone talks through what their budgeting issues are, what the budget looks like. It's just better awareness, and it's a best practice. And then we have the quarterly governing body reports, which as recently as a year or a year and a half ago, we did not have those, and now we get that information from every quarter. Better technology, improved technology, and then this one may sound a little counterintuitive in that we're hiring professionals, because that does cost money, but many times in the past, I think professionals weren't hired, staff tried to do it internally, and it just made for a less efficient process. So I think that's fairly important to note. Public Works, that's some nice efficiencies that I think are worth discussing. The sewer station alert, fundamentally it reduced the cost in paying for 5 phone lines. So again, that means it may not sound like a lot, but over the year that's going to add up. The mini excavator, we talked about that a couple meetings ago. That's going to pay dividends in the future. Restructuring of the right-of-way mowing crew, 2-shift rotation for snow operations. Snow equipment is calibrated now to ensure proper amount of material, so we're not wasting material. And then Brian and the team located 21 streetlights that weren't working where we are being charged a monthly rate. So again, just some nice efficiencies in our operations. Police department, community donations are allowing the PD to pay for Waterfest and future community events. Following a well-established fleet replacement plan, so the fleet management process, personnel and overtime. Good examples is right out there right now where you have Major Short, Assistant Chief Short, working council meeting to provide the security so that line personnel are not doing that. Then having commanders work vacant patrol shifts. They switched the K9 records management system, which saved about $3,000. Continuing to try to seek multiple grant opportunities, participating in traffic safety related grant opportunities. And then for the training, they try to do as much in-house towards their mandatory 40 hours that they saving funds. You can see the last 2 sentences, they use the Bonner range for free, paying membership, and then they limit the number of times they pay to go to center fire indoor range. So again, it's just some changes and good efficiencies from the police department. And then the last one is the fire department. You can see that they've gotten about $78,000 year to date in grant funding for equipment, about $100,000 year to date from other agencies, utilizing part-time employees to fill full-time positions to avoid excess overtime. We talked about that as part of our budget discussion. Bullets number 3 and 4 are essentially ways that Chief has really worked to mitigate the overtime in the fire department. It's he's reduced that budget substantially. EMS, using better analytics for the EMS supplies. Just making the department more efficient. You can see the online assistance through the training to the amount of outside training exercises. They continue to work, Dave and his team, Chief, continue to work to increase ambulance billing revenue. Payments faster, even in my short time here at Edwardsville, payments are coming in faster, so they're getting reimbursed quickly because of some of the steps they've taken. And then they continue to examine additional revenue streams, wildland deployment, EMS, education classes, fire recovery funds, potential of an additional ambulance. So all these things, Jim could probably get up and speak. Chief could get up and speak for probably another 20 or 30 minutes on this, but just kind of highlighted things that they have done to make the department more efficient. So I will stop there and see if there are any questions or complaints about any presented.
I'd like to say I applaud these departments. Very nice to see all the things is there, but it's a lot of hard work behind everybody. So thanks to all the hard work for our department.
Thank you. I mean, I think it is worth noting it has taken a lot of work, and it hasn't just happened.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's been an intensive focus on these things. So we understand resources are scarce, and we want to make sure that the best that we can. So, and everybody's gotten that message from this body and the city managers. Okay, I'll apologize in advance again for the small text, but it's hard to get 10 years worth of data on there. But basically what you have here, the GF, General Fund 10-year budget. So you're looking back 4 years from right now. Those 4 years are actual audited numbers. And then proposed 26 budget. And then estimating 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31. And obviously when you're estimating out essentially 6 years from now, we're making a lot of assumptions, right? But fundamentally, I kept expenditures at about a 5% cap, give or take. Some things we just think are going to go up more, so we factor that in. And then kept our main revenue source, that is property tax, at 10%, because that's about what it's been over the last number of years. So you won't see revenue itself be 10%, but property tax estimating as Mr. Johnson, if valuations keep rising, you're likely to see continued 10%. But again, you have to make an assumption, so those are the assumptions. C is that the current expenditure growth, or the potential expenditure grows versus the potential revenue growth, leads to a series of deficit budgets. With the giant caveat that it's simply an estimate with a lot of assumptions made.
Is the sales tax factored into your estimates here?
Sales tax is part of the
new,
total revenue.
The
yes.
new sales tax.
Yes.
So the deficit starts at 2027. You're saying it's starting to be a deficit, where it goes from the 31 249 to 834 784 surplus deficit. What is the factor that's really causing that? Is that a bad question to ask?
No, I think that's a great question. I'll give you a really generic, non-satisfactory
We need
answer.
generic. We need simple.
And the answer really is just the assumptions that were made as part of this. Although the mill amount may grow as we continue to reduce the mill levy, and overall revenue is just not enough to keep up with expenses. Or maybe we're spending too much, although I don't think that's the case. Again, I think we have made great strides to become more efficient. Things are just more expensive, and we are not immune to that. Whether it's fuel or health insurance or overall costs, things are just becoming more expensive. And when you want those things to run a city and you want projects to go along with it, it takes funding.
I think they're more expensive, but I don't think they're 10% more expensive. So, and I might sound like a broken record, but year after year, since I've been on council and I've been in real estate for 20 years now, property values have gone up every year, but that does not mean the government's budget needs to go up every year at the same rate. And so, yes, the appraised values might go up 10%, but our budgets shouldn't be going up 10%. That means, I mean, some of us up here, that just the city tax bill alone, if it went up 10%, you're looking at $500 a year to, I know people in particular, that's $1,200 a year just for the city to go up because their appraisal went up. That doesn't put more money in their bank account to pay their bills. I think we have to find other solutions besides continually increasing property taxes to bring in revenue to support our staff and what we're trying to do as a city.
Yeah, and again, I assumed 10% revenue growth in property tax, and except personnel, I assumed a 5% growth in wages. not to get too high-centered on this, because it's just a
I know it's an estimate, and I asked
Projection
for
right
it. I appreciate it. What we can look at more so is what we've been doing, and on that curve, if that's something that's sustainable into the future.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point here. And the thing I would point out is what we've done in the last 2 years and what we want to do in 26 is have a balanced budget. Because before that, it wasn't balanced. And I'll sound like a broken record, but that is not sustainable. And that's bad budgeting. And that's bad financial practice.
What's our economic development outlook look like? Is there anything on the planning board for economic development? Have we got some empty buildings down on Wood End? And do we have some properties that have been looked at that nothing's happening on, something to bring in some more revenue?
Overall, lots of questions in that, but the answer is yes. We do have empty buildings. We do have individuals who discuss things, don't move on. Or it will be 3 years before they make a decision, those kinds of things. So, again, in every corner of the city, we have some sort of industry. It's infrastructure in one way or the other, or infamous bonded property up north. So those are all challenges. Ebb and flow of the economy, people want to invest or they don't. That's not something we can really control. But yes, we have empty buildings. Yes, we have people who are interested in things, but do they have the money, or how serious are they? They shop around a lot. They want the best deal they can get, which makes sense. So yeah, I think there are things on the horizon and in discussion, but that's as far as we can really comment or with any comments.
I have a hard time getting my head wrapped around that. When I go to the chamber boards, to the board meetings and all that, and I see everything that's happening all around Edwardsville, and there's not a crane in Edwardsville building it. They drive through. So, I mean, I just can't understand why economic development is not happening here when I think there's opportunities for it. So that just, it hurts to see all of the development going on everywhere else and not here. That's just a statement from me. So anyway, it hurts our residents when we don't have those industries coming in here or not interested. So there's got to be some kind of a problem somewhere that's stopping that. All right, throw that in.
I think there has to be a good solution for the city and for the residents, because I understand that you're doing the best that you can with the numbers and what we need to do for the city, the employees, and everything. But to hear these people come in, and it breaks my heart to think that we'll put the burden on them more. And I can't do it. Well, and to Garrett's point, we sat here last year and talked about economic development and having somebody come in and represent our city to get more cash registers in here, and that's not happening. And that's something that I think we need to put some priority on to alleviate some of that tax burden, because when we can spread it out into sales tax revenue and not such a heavy lift for the property taxes will be helpful. It's disappointing to sit here a year later and still have the same conversation. But that'd be good, Garrett. I agree to get those cash registers moving.
It's cool that we have an audience tonight that can kind of hear some of the things that we try to deal with up here. Usually we're playing to an empty house, and it's awesome that there's people in here. Now some of the issues that we have to deal with up here to try and keep the taxes down. I'm not a big fan of lowering mill, and that'll get me shot more than likely, but we need to take care of our employees. And we have people in here weekly wanting stop signs, wanting a sewer fix, wanting the street worked on. You can't pay for that by grabbing money out of the air. That money's got to come somewhere. And I would suggest that a lot of people maybe do a little bit of a fight with UG on the real estate taxes. I don't know exactly how much control we really have over real estate. We're just kind of sitting here getting charged without having any kind of control over it. Is that kind of the truth?
We we have control over 25% of the tax bill that every one of our residents get. And so that's, I have been at the meetings at the UG and I've heard people devastated at the tax bills that they're getting. And it's going to hurt even more from the county this year. What they're talking about doing just for the Edwardsville, and this is in addition to anything we do, if your home's only worth $200,000 just from the county, if they proceed down that course, your tax bill is going up $200 just on the county. And now that doesn't include the school district, that doesn't include the city of Edwardsville, that does not include the library. And so those are all going to compact. But what we do have control of is the 25% of the tax bill that comes through this board. And it doesn't have to be dictated by the appraised value of the home. When I'm looking at a $8.5 to $9 million budget that's increasing by almost $1 million every year, I think that's probably something that's not sustainable, and we need to. Man, I see our department heads going out for grants and getting funding and doing things they can to keep the costs down, but we can't tax our people out of their homes, and so that's where we have to find that balance. We might need to find some other revenue that's not coming from our property taxes.
If I could comment briefly, a personal note, I deliver a lot of bad messages. I feel like I'm not a tax and spend lunatic. I hear what's being said, and it's hard to disagree, right? Part of the reason I think it's going to be even more painful for Wyandotte County this year is because they went so low last year. And it's just, right or wrong, now they're realizing that they are looking at the situation like we're estimating we might be.
So Wyandotte County cut the visible parts of their budget. They said, we're not going to mow so much. We're not going to pick up trash so much. We're going to cut back where it's visible so people feel it, since they went revenue neutral. There were other places they could cut and they refused to, and you'll see some of that, and probably millions of dollars of investments just west of here. And so they were very strategic in how they cut. I can promise you there's room to cut, and they don't need to do what they're doing to us this year. I could go on about that for a while. But yeah, they're, yeah.
Be used much, these tangible things out in our community growth, the mowing is important. So where you see operation, in the sense that where we saw big changes were in personnel. So that's over $700,000 in changes. And it's not just for pay. But once you change the pay, there's other things. The benefits are a little more expensive, that sort of thing. These increase usually every year. Even our benefit provider tries to stay relatively shopping around, getting different companies. We went from Cigna to United Health, for example, to keep those rates low. Okay? But they only last for so long, and they have to make increases as well. So where our inflation is, if you will, the cost drivers are specific, not in operations. It's not about increased fuel for mowing and things like that. Those were minimal changes. Where you see the biggest change is in personnel. And I think if you went through these budgets and estimated out that personnel growth with COLA and merit increases, things like that, that's where you're going to see most of your change, and not necessarily in a new mower or the fuel cost things, though those things do happen. So if you remember the presentation was last time, that personnel cost overall, once you start changing the pay, you absorb some of the just cost of the business, if you will. That's where you see most of our growth in the budget. And I think if you look back, that's where you saw.
And that is a huge piece of it, but doing the math, what's built into the budget is over $15,000 per employee. And I don't know any other business that's spending money like that. It's just not, that's not something that we can do.
I think the math is wrong, because again, part of it is we have to, once you pay $1 more to a person, right, there are other things that cost them money.
So how many employees do we have?
I think total 54-ish. We have room for part-time and, that's what.
So the math is 14,185 per person. That's the math on it.
So,
And so I'm like, and what I'm saying is it was unfortunate with the salary study that we did, that we didn't get the information that we requested. We wasted $15,000 on that when we were comparing to cities that are not similar to ours. They didn't take our benefits into account at all. There were a lot of questions left outstanding that we can't even use. And even that man came and said that would be crazy to do this all in 1 year, to make all these changes in a year. And I feel like what we want to do is make sure we are taking care of our employees. We want to be able to do that. But we need to have a better snapshot of what that looks like within our city, with a city our size, with a budget our size, because we can't keep increasing over almost $1 million a year. Like, we just can't do it.
I recall that there was about $60,000 just in the alignment of those who were out lower than the recommendation of the market value. And so then you take that piece of it. The rest is what I would consider normal progression. We normally have paid a step and grade system that was 3% for every employee the next year and the next year, right? Step 1 through 13. So that's 3%. And then if we average anywhere from 1.5% to 3% over those years in a COLA, that raise, so you could have a 6% change if you adopted a 3% COLA and a 3% step and grade. You're stepping up, so 6%, right? And that's somewhat what we budgeted in just the normal for nobody that's being adjusted based on the salary survey. Does that make sense? We have these outliers that by the time we move them up to the market level, cost us about $60,000. And then there's the just normal progression of the employee pay, that part of it, which we went ahead and factored in. We're trying to get in merit, we're trying to get in cost of living, as well as any longevity, and realize they have other benefits as well, education, if they're a field training officer, maybe some of these other specialty pays as well. So all of that adds up at some point. But as we budgeted this, if I understand how Mr. Gerber worked through the math, that's really what we're trying to capture is that 60,000. That's the first piece. Move people where they need to be that are outliers, and then just normal progression. So that's on the pay. So once you start adding that in, the wages, right? Then you have these other, the taxes, the health insurance, all of these other things that go in, and then that grows that particular piece of the budget fairly quickly.
Any other comments, questions?
Yeah. I don't want to monopolize time, so if anyone has
I didn't
another.
win the lottery, so we got to figure it out. I'll buy tickets.
Maybe what I essentially did was the same exercise with several of our other major funds. So you can see the next fund would be the sewer fund. And again, you can see that eventually our expenditures start to outpace our revenue unless we have some type of revenue decrease or revenue increase or rate increase or some sort of miracle where the sewer system doesn't need 50 years worth of deferred maintenance done every year. But right now, that's kind of where it stands. Again, same sort of assumptions, same sort of estimates. So don't take them with much more than a grain of salt. It's just meant to be illustrative. The fact that we have a lot of deferred maintenance and it's hard to come by revenue in this one.
This is all customer driven. And then expenses on the treatment side. Of course, any repairs, which are expensive.
And this is where we just replaced the pumps, correct?
Some of them. Yes.
Some of them.
In one station, spent several thousands of dollars
Right.
in one place.
So use this as an example though of where we can offset potential property tax. We're budgeting a deficit. We're working in a deficit for sewer fund. Like, why are we in the hole on that? Am I reading it wrong? Like 2023, we brought in 803 and we spent 1.1 million. 2024, we brought in 721,000. We spent 758. 2025, we charged 900,000 or brought in 900,000. We spent 1.1 million. If we were potentially we're not charging enough for sewer,
Correct.
and then our property tax is subsidizing it. I mean, we're going in the hole. So is that coming from? It's not a general fund; it's sewer fund.
Yeah, sewer
Yes.
So
specific.
it's chipping away at the sewer fund
Yes.
instead of.
And remember, the philosophy changed a little bit here. We're budgeting the entire amount, correct? So we have the expenditure authority.
Yeah, we're not going to do a deficit budget. This again is just an illustration. Part of the sewer fund, part of that is driven by some debt that the sewer fund has that gets transferred to the debt service fund. So a good, I can't remember the exact number, but it's several hundred thousand. So a quarter of that, 20 to 25% of that is driven by debt.
And what debt was that for?
For sewer.
I mean, which project?
More than likely, that's out west. What's this? 93rd? Yeah, probably more than one piece of debt. It's 183,000. Yeah. Then we have personnel, we have a sewer foreman, doing sewer repair work routinely.
And then we're just trying to be proactive and budget an appropriate amount for potential repairs. If we don't spend it, then it will likely have a surplus, but
So if the revenue's coming in, say we're looking at 2027, I know it's just an estimate, and we're going to have about $129 unencumbered cash. Pump goes out, who pays for that? Where does that money come from? Does that come from the general fund or somewhere else?
it'll come out of the sewer expenditures, not that 1.2. So there's money in there budgeted for those potential repairs.
But I'm saying after that, when there's only 129 left, that's just refilled the next year, and that's how it's up to the.
No, that means essentially your bank account starts with $100. And then, if you make 954 and spend 103, the deficit only grows.
Where do the revenues come from for the sewer?
That's the maintenance.
So we're operating in a deficit.
We
We're
are
not charging
right
enough.
now, but we eventually will in a district. Well, in fact, we are right now because you can see the 2025 budget. We adopted more expenditures than revenues. The rate increases are no fun for anyone.
Which is simply rate increases we're offsetting from the county, as we just recently did.
I remember.
Right? They're just offsetting. It's a pass-through. It doesn't really increase our revenue. Customers increase our revenue.
Special highway fund, as you recall, this is primarily funded through gas tax, the city's portion of the gas tax. We do have an employee and a half in there, and you can see that from 24 to 25, there was a jump in expenditures, and that's because we didn't add any new personnel, we just changed what we paid for it. Frankly, there wasn't enough general fund to help pay for that, so we moved it to here, because those folks primarily work on streets. But again, this is those funds that just is unsustainable.
The comment I have is sci-fi was the biggest impact. We planned all of this around before they made their decision. We had our budget in place, and they decided to. It's low-hanging fruit. The county then said no more sci-fi transfer, which was a $250,000.
Is that the fluctuation in the revenues from 24, 25, 26, and 27?
Yes, it came in 24, getting a very small payment in 25, but bear in mind that, for example, looking ahead to 28, you see 232 in revenue, which would be about our gas tax share. We wouldn't budget 800,000. We only had 252,000 in revenues. That's just an illustration of if we continue along our current expenditures. But that 800,000 would go a long ways towards some street maintenance, which is primarily what these funds are used for.
Was it last year you said that we pulled 1.5 employees payroll and benefits from general to the special highway fund?
In the 25 budget, that was the first year we did that, yes.
So just this budget.
This current budget, yes.
And so there should be about an employee and a half revenue in the general fund or cushion in the general fund to make up any difference since this is not funded through property tax.
The reason we moved them from the general fund to here is because the general fund couldn't afford them. We added another 8.5 back to the general fund. You'd be talking about,
Just trying to find money.
yeah, pay and benefits, you'd be talking about 150,000.
Anything happening on Highland Ridge up there on the houses that are being built? That'd help quite a bit if we got that filled in.
Filled up, yeah, and so. Yes. They're working.
Blowing up.
They have open houses.
Out there to get that sold.
Solid waste is a little better news. Not much. The deficit is a little farther out. But as we have discussed, this is one of those contracts that we want to look at and make changes to so that pardon my language, but that the city isn't getting screwed in the contract because it's just a bad contract. We want to fix that. So I think this will look better after that contract is done.
I had to shore that up because it was in such bad shape with about $60,000 transfer to fix that account. And of course, we had a pretty aggressive, proactive collection policy. I think that's worked. We're still in that 125,000 range of uncollected. You can't expect to collect 100%. Shouldn't. So we're working on it.
Yeah, it's hard being mean to the customers, but we have an obligation to everyone who pays. And the city manager's done a great job of making sure that happens. Special sales tax is also relatively healthy. But the assumptions I made in that were that expenditures would stay essentially the same, that each, right now, PD has some out of there for their video system. Fire has money in there for their equipment payments. There's 150 in there for parks projects, and about that for equipment and projects for public works. And I just kept those flat in this scenario. So, with the sales tax growing a little bit. So I think I was ending on a high note. Was my thoughts. So.
Mark's always on, I know.
Questions, comments?
Sure.
I think we need to really get aggressive on trying to get some people located in here. And I think that we need to do something to get involved with this property where the hotel was going to be. I don't know legally what we can do, but I'd sure like to see some kind of investigation going on what can we do to sell that property, to get something built up there. You got Bucky's coming in across the way. We've got property on the west side of 110th that something could be done. We've got power up there now, you know, from the Scannell property. Why can't something be done on that property to get something in there that'll bring some cash registers in this town? Roscoe's and BP are not going to support this.
I think our proactivity has been, our bond counsel's involved. There may be some action that we can't take, and but we're letting them explore it before we make any kind of commitments at all. So you don't know where we stand. They have that on their schedule, and they're doing the work to do what they can. That's really all I have for you on is there may be some legal position that we can have. No matter what, from my understanding, these benefit districts, that new project has to start something some right way. So there may be some action that way that we can get some split up. People have standing. They issue city agreed, approve the issuance of bonds. Go with the hard rock property. So there's some obligation there, not necessarily by the city, but there's an expectation that, as with any investment, there's a risk. Okay? So we need to explore our legal position, and we formally requested that, and they're working.
So I guess I would ask in your presentation, it didn't really show us, maybe I missed it. Yeah, it probably for the 2026 expenditure was based on a 39.0 mill levy.
That's correct.
Can you go back to that very,
The general fund.
yeah, the one that shows. Anyone else have questions, comments, anything you want to see, information you need to give us word? I think I've already said what I need to say.
Other than I agree with Garrett. Gotta get.
Why isn't there any growth in that?
Brad, I might mention this at the end. We used to have, is it Greg come and speak to us? Can we invite him for a meeting?
And we have, he does produce a kind of an update countywide.
Right, countywide, but Edwardsville,
Typically-
we'd like, yes, Edwardsville.
You probably get that on your email from him.
Yeah, you should.
But
I do.
Everything's KCK, Waller's Point.
Right, and I don't,
Nothing Edwardsville. So what is stopping that? We're paying him what? We're paying Wyandotte Economic 15,000, 20,000?
I don't know as I'd be critical of their efforts.
right,
In the sense that at every turn, think of all four corners. Their properties have some sort of major obstacles. Number one, some of them are very expensive. Number two, only certain things can go there. Number three, obstacles. There's no infrastructure. Sewer is missing. Okay, the bond issue up there. You know, if you buy that property, you've got these other burdens that you may have to take on. You know, again, it's a matter of those are all the things and more, and you have to have somebody who wants that specific location, that sort of thing. We've talked over the last 20 plus months. We've talked to several people, and they've made proposals, and you heard formally from one that's going to Independence, and they just couldn't make those kinds of things happen for various reasons. And so I wouldn't blame the EDC. They've even done retention visits as they do regularly. Standard Motor Company, they're going because they built a new building. What they're going to do with that, they haven't told those folks exactly what's going to happen. They make the visits they've done, and we're paying $15,000 a year for them. I think we're getting a value there, but there are some obstacles, not just property, not just location. It's expense, all these other things. It's just really not an open market for some of the people that we've talked to. It's just not. Do we want certain things? You know, you can talk to the TA, Travel America, for example. They're always looking for some place to, you know, you're between these stops or whatever. But that may be not what we want. We want quality development rather than just development just because. That's the message I received from this body as well as the Planning Commission, and I think that's what the community expects.
I thought we were hiring somebody specifically to do that. What happened
Yeah,
with that?
we, you know, as I said at the previous meeting about the same topic was, we tried. There's potentially not enough money per year to pay someone, so that the pay could be a problem. Number two, we had a pretty good candidate, was very willing, would have been a great hire. The problem was they wanted to be an employee, which, you know, adds another 28%, right? We're talking pay and benefits, right? When you hire, they don't want to be a contractor, they wanted the insurance and the retirement things. That really adds up, and that would have been a really good hire, but we couldn't make the deal. I didn't think it was a right investment at the time. We only have 350 in that account to make it last 3 and 4 years. You need some investment over a period of time to make this have an impact. We've talked to several people, you know, been proactive in recruiting, and it's too much for one person. You know, there's a things are everywhere. The policies with the tax and finance and CID, we did these developments and we did them kind of different for each one, so it wasn't very standardized. So when somebody calls, we have to kind of go, well, we did this for this one, and we did this for this one. We may be able to do that. There's no standardization, and some of that technical paperwork was overwhelming for a few of the candidates. They just don't want to do it. So I mean, there's a varied, but I think I was high hope that we could get away with about 75,000 a year. That's just not going to come in. So if you're talking, if we don't want to spend any general fund money and you just do economic development money, 100,000 a year is going to pay for maybe some benefits in a person, and in the end, you'll spend that in 3 years, and it's just not a lot. So what you could do is do that, get somebody on board, really appreciate them, so you put them back in the general fund and pay them as an employee, for example. Those are possibilities, but you see the budget, that adds very quickly. So we have not stalled that, and we've entertained some calls here and there, but we explain what the job is and the interaction that you're going to have to do. Wyandotte County, you have to travel, you're going to have to late hours, whatever it is, and do this recruitment. It's quite a bit of work that some folks who would be interested in just aren't ready for that. They don't want to be semi-retired, that sort of thing, or they want to be employee. What they made at another place where they're employee was just too much money, couldn't match it.
Or are we planning on just not even getting anything for the theme park that's going to go in on 118th Street, the American Royal that's north of us? And I mean, are we not planning on trying to aggressively pursue something to come into Edwardsville? Bonner Springs has got 2 quick trips within a half mile of each other. You know how the cash registers go. Why can't we actively try and recruit somebody to come here? Does Quick Trip own property on the west side of 110th Street? And it's just sitting there with a tore down house on it. We can't even get that house torn down, it looks like. I mean, there's things that I think can be solved that would help us with this right here. If we keep cutting the taxes here, keep cutting this mill levy, we're going to go out of business. And you're sitting there telling us that right now. We need to be more active and aggressive about trying to draw people in here and bring some cash registers or some houses in here. I don't understand what the big problem is. I mean, you know, maybe I'm just simple-minded. It seems to me like there ought to be some kind of a solution for this.
How much of the revenue increase is not based on property tax?
For the proposed budget for the 26 budget. So I assumed a 5% growth in sales tax. In that number, I assume 39 mills for the property tax. So those would be the 2 biggest drivers of revenue. You know, as we talk about every quarter, our 5 biggest revenue drivers, right? Fees aren't really going up, or fees, franchise fees, you know, modest growth in that. So I would say most of the revenue growth comes from property tax and sales tax.
So
I would
5%
say-
in sales tax, about how much money would that be?
5% what we, sales and use tax is probably, 1,000.
Remember, we're transferring some of that to debt. What was the mill worth last year?
Last year, so for our current budget, 100,000.
What's it, what the next coming up with?
124. Sorry, Councilman, 124,947.
So I guess my question is the driving force, the total expenditures last year were 8 million, right? But we had a surplus, so what's the difference for our coming up budget and the expenditure there? Why the big jump in expenditures?
I mean, a lot of that is driven by personnel cost.
Well, what was our personnel cost for 2025 then? Was it roughly the same?
I mean, it's the same plus 6% for full merit longevity, plus, 15 to 20% potentially for insurance. Other minor things, I suppose, as we've talked about.
Yet our mill went up like almost 11 grand.
Yes.
And we're anticipating lowering to 5% for our merit base and stuff like that, right?
We collected one less mill as well.
Right.
So that, those didn't offset, but they were offsetting.
So I guess my the expenditures are still confusing. I mean, why so much are we spending so much for employees benefits? Because you did, it sounds like you gave more of a percentage last year for raises than you are planning on doing this year. It's just a fixed.
I mean, last year, I honestly don't recall what the merit of the COLA and the longevity and everything was for 25. But I think it was 6% as well, so it's similar.
Okay, but you said it's 5%, just a little bit ago.
Then I misspoke because what I have programmed into the 26 budget is 6%. In fact, and I put that in the background memo as well. So I'm sure it's 6%.
I'm just curious, what does the COLA look like this year? It's like 2.7, right?
Then we have 3% budgeted for COLA slash longevity and 3% for merit. And merit, the way the system could potentially be designed is it can go anywhere from 2% to 5%, right? So you kind of pick a number in the middle that you think most people will land on. There'll be some super high performers and probably some low performers that get it 1 or 2%.
So
Right?
not everybody has a
Everybody gets a COLA because that's the intent of a COLA. Unless you're a poor performer, everybody's likely to get some kind of merit.
So what's the total maximum per employee increase? Maximum 6%. And so 6% of 6.6 million, which I think is our projected payroll and benefit, is 396,000.
Yeah, I mean, that's right.
But not 766,000. And I think that's where some of this confusion comes in, because I think we could potentially do a lot better for our residents in the property tax piece if we dial into this a little bit more on what because we want to have a pay scale that values longevity and rewards longevity for our employees, but it can't be a shot in the dark at $15,000 per employee. I can't explain that to my neighbors. I just can't do it. And so, mean, I think we probably need to dig in on that a little bit more before we just pass a budget that says, hey, let's, budget this all in and see where it shakes out. I don't think we can do that much. We need to be more specific. Because that's a pretty broad distance between 760,000 to 400,000.
Several meetings ago, I presented the fire department's budget that showed their personnel, that when you increase this cost, the other costs increase. Would it be helpful to do that again at your next meeting? To see that again?
I think what I'd like to see is compared to other cities our size, what their budgets are for personnel. How many police officers do they have for a city our size, and what's their overall budget? What's their vehicle policy? For our fire department, how many people should we have? Our fire department does a great job in supplementing with part-time. What's their, what is the overall budget supposed to be? Both of these departments, Public Works even, but they do a great job in pulling grant funding in. But if we can see more of an apples to apples, which is what we were asking for before, that would help us know if we're doing our job and being responsible with the tax dollars that are coming our way. If it were all coming from sales tax and franchise fees and things like that, it would be a whole lot easier to check off the list. But we have people sitting in here tonight saying, hey, I'm retired and I can't afford my bills. And we have to get more specific than what we're getting. But to answer your, I mean, you could bring that back, but I think we need more than that. Won't sit here all night. Other feedback, what would you like to see? Any changes?
I like the longevity chart. An employee's been here 5 years. The next bump is a 10-year, 15, and 20. We have in between. I don't like the merit base because I think that if you're a buddy with someone, you're going to get a better raise than someone. That's how I feel.
And I do want to take care of our guys that are underpaid right now. I think that's priority.
We got to remember our first responders. They work holidays, and even our street department. If it's Christmas and it's snowing 12 inches, guess who's out there? Sacrificing his family. I think our philosophy was you have to create a system that deals with all the employees. We did have previously a longevity pay system under contract, and that was a system like you were mentioning, but it was in addition to a COLA and a step and grade system. So that was one added benefit. It's no different than, for example, you have a 4-year degree and you're getting 28 cents an hour more just because you have that 4-year degree. So if we only have longevity, for example, it doesn't do our upfront folks, for example, in this building who do a terrific job. How do we give them raises? So we had this step and grade. That's where that comes from, 1 through 13, and every one of those steps was 3%. So if you move from step 1 to 2, that's a 3% increase. We kind of moved away from that to hopefully replace that with some merit, so that your pay was based on at least some performance. And then you have these other things, such as what are we going to change the pay scale with COLA, the cost of living, adjust the pay scale. So that applies to the pay scale and every employee.
I think you were suggesting, though, that even the administration would get longevity increase. And so you scrap step and grade, that's done.
Yeah, that's
you
done.
push longevity, you get bigger bumps that are more substantial to reward the people that are here, and then you still consider COLA every year. And so it's longevity and COLA without subjectivity.
Yeah. And we just don't, I appreciate the concept, but I think we need some sort of more consistent across the board that includes that as a piece of the discussion.
I think we're looking though at that, and it's not working overall. We can't keep increasing the budget by $800,000, $1 million a year, and you're saying that's primarily payroll.
Yeah, and here's the thing, you have, say you set your COLA or your longevity at the 3rd year, you have, say, are you doing it every year after the third year? There's these big, this is not just one department, but the whole city. You're going to maybe find that that's not so consistent, that suddenly there's these spikes, right? And then, okay, last year it was only 300,000, but this year it's 900,000, right? I mean, that's extremes, but that could happen mathematically.
So I think in longevity, it's not every single year is a spike. It would be like when an employee hits 5 year, they get a bump. So it's not everybody at once. They get a substantial bump when they might hit 8 years or 10 years, another. So it's not all this big hit at once, but it keeps them motivated and keeps them engaged. And then they see the substantial bump coming further when it's, you can shake your head no, but I'm telling you, there are multiple people up here that are that deal with this pay as it is now. And when it's a 2%, 3%, 4% drop in the bucket every year, it's absorbed in taxes and they don't even notice it. And so, and then we hear, well, our staff are underpaid and we're not doing, so we need to find something that we're not hearing our staff's underpaid anymore. We want to be able to take care of, them, but we can't have this broad brush of a stroke that's double the amount of money you're saying you need to do that. Sorry, Councilman Mullen, you were asking questions.
No, you're good. I think our position is that we need something stable. I agree that the step and grade, it was just an automatic hit you got. I appreciate the fact that you can earn some. I appreciate that you also earn by longevity. And the fact that, hey, to keep up with inflation, we had them. And that a 6% could be divided that way. This percentage and that percentage applies to longevity, this or whatever. Or we could say this is absolutely, in addition to your merit and the COLA that on your 5th year, you get a 3% total of your pay. This jumps up. We can do those spikes. We can design it that way. And that's just, I think it's more consistent. It's something you can see rather than I'm wishing for a COLA my first 4 years, and then hopefully I'm here my 5th year, and then my longevity kicks in. And how substantial is that? Is that really, is 4,000 more a year, for example, the motivator is somebody's going to stick around for 5 years, and then maybe just, I started $17 an hour, and then year after year I'm getting 2.5%, maybe 3%, right? A slow climb until I get to my 5th year, and then I got to wait 5 more years to really see that bump again. I just think if we build it more consistent across the board, because if I understand some of the background from your employer, that there are pay bumps in addition to this big longevity pay, right? It's just a COLA. And is that like a fixed rate, like 2.7 or 3? We don't even know. Is that done by some sort of statistical review? Yeah. See, and that's part of where the things don't really align. Is that you've got a party negotiating what they're going to get, and it's a 3-year window, and then it changes either lower or higher. That's so from our perspective, something just a little more steady. I think is probably the best approach. And you could have a policy that says if it's 3 years, you get this bump. It's 5 years, whatever it might be. You could implement those types of things to promote the longevity piece, and we could budget that way. But you're also budgeting this baseline as well.
And I think you're taking away the room for the longevity if you're also saying we're keeping the exact same increases that we're having year after year. I don't know anyone in private industry that gets the same, and then longevity, and then COLA. And maybe we're not on, and I don't want to get stuck here. I think we've been talking about it for half an hour now. But ultimately, I think we're going to need to find a solution that works. I think that what I've heard for years is that the staff isn't feeling that they're compensated, and so we're trying to find solutions that are different and not just in addition to.
We certainly, this is a policy decision. What we've done in the budget is, as you heard, there's a fixed number trying to get, and then how we take that particular number and then apply it to some sort of pay policy. That's what we're looking for next. But this is, so if we approve a budget similar to what we propose, we know how much has been budgeted in that particular line items for pay. Then we just need to know how to apply it through a policy. That could include merit, no merit, COLA, longevity, all these things. And remember, we do have other incentive pays such as your specialty pays in addition to that, right? So those are done by factored in your hourly rate. So the more hourly rate you get, a little more change comes from your, instead of 28 cents, it's 30 cents now for your bachelor. These things grow as well. So they're based on your salary because that's the federal regulation of how we have to calculate those things. So it does grow the bottom, if you will, the wage of the employee in which those apply. So essentially, in summary, what we have is a proposal of this amount of money. And then what we can come back to as we move along is a decision on policy, how to apply that to the, again, and we would then make any changes if that's reduced in any way. So say if it's 5%, then we have to divide 5% by whatever the policy is, merit, longevity, COLA. And it would vary. It wouldn't be just a flat pay every time. How it was more flat was the step and grade was absolutely 3%. Every time you moved one, it was 3%. In the merit system, someone didn't perform quite as well, could get a 2%. Right? So that is different than, and if you only had a 2% COLA, that's 4%. So it's different than 6%. That could apply.
I think that from what I've heard, turnover is more of an issue that we're trying to resolve. In having people investing in the people that are sticking with our city is what we're wanting to do more so. If somebody's not doing their job, then fire them. But they don't need extra pay for doing their job. But if they're sticking with our city, we want to incentivize that in longevity. We have employees that have been with our city for quite some time, and we want to keep them and we want to take care of them. But I would rather our focus be, and you guys please chime in as well. But I think we need to really focus on longevity and keeping the people that have committed to our city.
Statistically, we lose our people in the first 5 years. So rewarding those who stay past that, but we got to figure out the first 5 years because, for example, the police department, that's a lot of investment. First 5 years of that, KCK, or whoever, right, that they go on down the road. So part of what we have to address is what do we do in that first 5 years in any department? We want our firefighters to be here, our front staff, whatever it might be. So that's part of what the study was to say, where were we? Where are we in relation to the market value? And those were mainly the outliers. Those first 5 years of their employment, they weren't quite even up to the market, and that's where the adjustments will come in. Mainly in public safety, if I remember what we're open to the policy. It's just a matter of what we decide. Budget-wise, we have to have a number, so that's what we presented.
So what are our next? I'm sorry. Any other comments or questions before? No. What do we do next here?
Well, I think we can move to item 5. We just need to set up hearing date for the budget itself.
Okay. And before we do that, are we needing to vote on exceeding revenue neutral or not? Do we have a consensus there?
Yes, is my opinion based on the statute. Just read it. So is the public hearing to consider, this is KSA 79-2988, subsection three is what we're working off of. The public hearing to consider exceeding the revenue neutral rate shall be held not sooner than August 20th and not later than September 20th. The governing body shall provide interested taxpayers desiring to be heard an opportunity to present oral testimony within a reasonable time limits and without unreasonable restriction on the number of individuals allowed to make public comment. The public hearing may be conducted in conjunction with the proposed budget hearing if the governing body otherwise complies with all the requirements of the section. Nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit additional public hearings that provide additional opportunities to present testimony or public comment prior to the public hearing by this section, so you can have lead-up hearings to the hearing, but this is the hearing. A majority vote, section 4, a majority vote of the governing body by the adoption of a resolution or ordinance to approve exceeding the revenue neutral rate shall be required prior to adoption of a proposed budget that will result in a tax rate in excess of the revenue neutral rate. Such vote of the governing body shall be conducted at the public hearing and on the same day as the commencement of the public hearing after the governing body has heard from interested taxpayers and shall be by roll call vote. So it's my opinion that if you do want to consider exceeding that at your budget hearing, you would need to hold that, take action today to preserve that option. I think that amending the agenda, that's totally up to you. I don't think it has legal import because the notice of hearing that you gave was a statutory notice that assumed everything in the statute, including that pursuant to statute, the vote would be on the same day as the commencement of the hearing.
Okay, so if council wants to exceed revenue neutral, which would be increase tax, then we would need a motion. And then if they're not wanting to exceed revenue neutral, then we don't need a motion.
You don't need to take any action.
Okay.
What's the option on having another public hearing at the next meeting and then have it on the agenda printed that we're gonna make a vote after? I'm still concerned with the people that are in here not knowing that there was gonna be a vote, because some of these people have done research, studied on this, and might have, one of them made some comments before we decide what we're gonna do.
Well, they have that opportunity to make comment through public notice, but I think that it would violate if you continue it at this point, it would violate two provisions of that statute. First of which is that it has to be done at the same hearing as the commencement, on the same day as the commencement of the hearing, which was today. And second is it contemplates that the public hearing occurs before September 20th. So if you're asking me whether you could call us a special meeting between now and September 20th, I still think you may have problems with that. So
Still would have problems.
still with problems, even if that other provision of it has to be taken the same date. I do know of bodies that have continued reopened the public hearing, so to speak, and then continued it to a different day. I don't think that necessarily was a deal breaker, so to speak, with VODA. Just don't think you guys want to make new case law. So if you want to do something more than revenue neutral, action has to be taken today, in my opinion. If you do nothing, then you're at the budget hearing, you would be restricted to the revenue.
Resolution 2025-14 is exceeding revenue neutral rate should you adopt. Not to exceed the 39 rules that was proposed.
That number?
Resolution
Yeah,
2025-14 should be right after your
I got it.
item number 3, background.
I see it. Do we need to amend the agenda, or can I make a motion?
I don't think you need to amend it.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2025-14.
A second? Moving on to item number 5. Consider approval of the notice of a budget hearing setting the public hearing for the 2026 budget for September 22nd, 2025 at 6 p.m. Or soon thereafter at City Hall, 690 South 4th Street.
If there's no questions, I'd make a motion to consider approval of the notice of budget hearing setting the public hearing for the 2026 budget for September 22nd, 2025 at 6 p.m. or soon thereafter at City Hall, 690 South 4th Street.
Second. A motion from Councilman Shriver, a second from Councilman Adcox. Will the clerk please call roll?
Adcox, yes. Mullin.
Yes.
Everhart.
Yes.
Yes.
Shriver. Yes.
Item 6, consider a motion to recess into executive session pursuant to KSA 7543-19B2 for consultation with legal counsel, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship regarding potential litigation.
How much time?
15 minutes?
Yeah. Add an additional topic.
In addition?
Yeah.
In addition.
So then,
A second?
So how much time would you need?
15 is fine.
Oh.
The option.
may I say, and so moved, or do I need to repeat that?
Yes.
So moved.
Yeah.
Make a motion, so moved.
Second. We have a motion from Councilman Shriver, a second from Councilman Adcox. Will the clerk please call roll?
Yes.
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 Mayor, the motion have who was in it?
Amend the motion.
Yeah. So can we do the motion again?
Will you amend the motion to include city manager and city attorney?
Amend the motion to include city manager and city attorney.
Camilla, will you second that? We have a motion and a second to amend. Will the clerk please call roll? Yes.
Yes.
This conference will now be recorded.
Can I do it?
Yeah, you can.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilman Millat, second from Councilman Shriver. Will the clerk please call roll?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Make a motion to return to executive session for 15 minutes.
We have a motion from Councilman Shriver, a second from Councilman Millat. Will the clerk please call roll?
Yes.
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 This conference will now be recorded.
Make a motion to return to regular session.
Second. We have a motion from Councilman Shriver, a second from Councilman Adcox. Will the clerk please call roll?
Yes.
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 City manager report.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. It was requested by two council persons to bring forward the report on the library. I didn't know really the crooks and boundaries of that. Oh boy. Oh,
Good to have it.
okay.
Switch my phone and make
Good
that
thing
bigger.
I brought glasses and a piece of paper. I'm going to kind of rush through this. I apologize. So essentially, I presume it has something to do with my note in regards to the 819 Wyandotte County Board meeting about our library funding request. And I think the contentious meeting was a light word. Essentially, let me say, my job is political awareness, not political involvement. That's not what I do. I think there is certainly political and personal indifference of at least 4 of those board members, in that there was a lot of self or organizational representation, or just their priorities are them and their money. I don't know as I fault them, but again, as I previously stated, that's the priority over a celebration of additional library services in Wyandotte County, which I think was fairly universal. Those who wanted to say it maybe didn't say it, but that theme repeated itself again. They pretty much, I kind of mentioned that that there's certainly interpersonal dynamics, and I mentioned that kind of personal and political indifferences, and then strategic delays, and this may be one. It's an exercise of futility, quite frankly, and I'm a little tired of it. That we want pennies in the budget. We don't know if we're paying $16 a new book or we're paying $14 on a reduced price. We just don't know. We have an idea, but that high level budget wasn't enough for them, even though I think I did my best. Confusion and lack of information regarding their authority, that they're not well apprised of what their authority really is and what they can and can't do with their budget and that sort of thing, and the legality of the request. You got one person on one side saying it's illegal, the other person says no, it's legal, that we didn't earmark monies for the Piper Library, and then saying that they did, and then saying that they can't do it, it's illegal for Edwardsville, right? There was really a convoluted message there. It was contrary to one another. So half the group thought, well, yeah, we did have this savings, if you will, fund balance, purposely because Piper had chosen to maybe open an old school building to be their library. I don't know how much momentum that truly has. We can certainly dig down deeper. I don't know if it was a request to earmark some money. And I'm saying this in the sense that somewhat my opinion of just the background that I could see is that would maybe the momentum for then their board to say, oh, we can get this 1 point some million for ours if we just move forward and voting in the library. I don't know if that's the kind of the sequence of things, but certainly there is some animosity, maybe I don't know, jealousy. I don't have any idea, but certainly the group, at least half of them, felt that they had earmarked some money, and then the other half said, well, that's illegal, we can't do that when it comes to Edwardsville requests. So it was really convoluted. There was at least 2 of 3, not more, nodders that if we propose a new interlocal agreement with them, that we would then be denied that interlocal agreement, that we somehow not participate. And that was flatly stated by at least 2, and if not nodded by at least other 2. So there is certainly a 4 group there that has some indifference to us and our proposal.
Mark, I hate to interrupt. Do they have the authority to
No,
turn you down? Oh, okay.
no. I mean, we haven't made a proposal. The interlocal agreement, we had the authority to tell them that we were leaving the Wyandotte County, pet board. It's a very complex layer of school districts and a city, and then Bonner Springs, which is a city, but in the sense they don't pay any taxes to the library board, but they have a budget of about $800,000, and they make a request of every bit of $500,000 from that group. And so, they're getting a substantial portion from that particular group. And I get why they're doing it, is because our folks get to go over there. It's a closed library. They provide some services, but it is a pretty good chunk of change. And I think there's a feeling that they're going to have to restructure about how they do that. Now, one reason we want to join with them, if they continue paying the other libraries without taxation, then why wouldn't we get our share of that? But if they're going to eliminate that as a policy and not give, for example, anybody who doesn't pay taxes any of that library money, that makes sense that, okay, we're just an advisory. But we don't know how that's going to be restructured. So essentially, we thought it would be a good tactic strategy to bring in Ellen Foster from our Finkel Williams architecture to show the building and kind of the progress and the layout and that sort of thing. And so we did that. And it was noted that it's a pretty building, but in a sense, with some acknowledgement, nodding and things, if Edwardsville citizens wants a library, they should pay for it. Well, the thing of it is, the money that's in with Wyandotte County Library Board is Edwardsville money, at least 500,000+ of it. Okay, makes some sense. And we are going to pay for our own library. We're going to do it ourselves. So I think there was a suggestion that we continue this group without withdrawing by contracting with KCK Library System. And that's a formula that maybe the city of KCK uses or that sort of thing. But we necessarily don't want to do that. This is a department of the city, and it's our library, and we're going to take care of it in that format. That's what I believe our citizens said, and they didn't protest as they could have in 61 days when we did have a charter ordinance to adopt and opt out and then come back in as a city department. So with that said, boy, I apologize for this is a PDF put into a PowerPoint, but I want to give you some background very quickly. There is at least 200-300 libraries that input data into the Northeast Kansas library system, which we would be a member of. And that's a good thing. That's interlocal library exchanges. That's a really good partnership. Some courier services, IT services. This is a good group. Michael McDonald is a good fellow. I talked to him again today. But if you look on some of these, I'm just going to brief it up very quickly. The average population served, I said, under 10,000, tell me about a city library and kind of their data. So I took all this data, they had pages and pages of it, and reduced it to this short, quick, and I'll try to make it short, quick, presentation here. But you can see that the average served, there's 2,500, but there's also some with 10,000 population in it, that sort of thing. But these come out, the average library visits 17,000. Of 38 samples of under 10,000 population with libraries, there's 17,000 visitors. That's pretty good. I mean, we have. I think there was some doubt about the size of our library and like the footprint, and that our population is small. We're never going to get anybody. But one of the provisions of the Northeast Kansas library system is that we allow outsiders to come in. You know, it's a part of a book exchange. We want people to visit our library and be proud of it, right? In the sense that the service hours is about 2,300 hours a year. The average library size, 5,000+ square feet. Guess what? That's what we got, right? I mean, this data is really invaluable to say we're doing it right. Now, did we earmarked originally because of some planning? The library piece of this came later in the municipal complex design, okay? And it was in the paperwork, it was only earmarked to be about 1,500 square feet, but that wasn't near big enough. And we knew we were going to change it. But part of what we're trying to do now is program up to 5,000 square feet plus, okay? But there's some shared space in our library, a meeting room, bathrooms, those kinds of things, closet, that sort of stuff. So we've got usable space that's adequate for growth, but we do have to account for budgeting, okay, in filling the space up with usable things for a library. The 3,000+ transactions, the average number of employees, 2.3. The average rate, now this is it's about $12.43. Now we got some rural areas as well, maybe not the metro standard, but that's the average in all of that data of 38. And that is not for the librarian themselves. That's maybe for the part-time and the clerk work, that sort of thing. Expenditures, 205,000+ on average for staff. Salary and wages, that's the average. Employee benefits, right? And I'll get to ours somewhat, what we're proposing. Library fund revenue is about 150,000 generated. That's revenue, one way or the other, that's generated for it. Local government sharing, either they're 100% or they're sharing about 177, and then you can kind of go through that. The total revenue, grants, all the things that on average for these libraries, 38 of them, under 10,000, is about 217,000, okay? Now, some of them have a lot less employees, maybe don't have near the visitors, but that's the average. Okay. Total collections, as you can see, they're spending 126,000, operation about 54,000, and operating expenditures overall about 205,000. Again, that's the average of 2.3 with about 500 square feet, 17,000 visitors. And we don't necessarily break down all of the books because that percentage-wise, that was extensive data. But I kind of gave you a summary of the video, the audio. You could look at those types of things. But owned, so this is the catalog owned. 14,000 on average for these libraries. We're proposing 10,000, and we thought that was pretty significant. That should grow. I did a projection. That should grow over the years, especially the first 3 years. That we could get up to another 4,000 in growth if we have to. So, other materials, just technology. We're proposing a computer lab with several computers in it. 10 is the average. Access to 10 in these library with 5,000 average square feet. There's 10 computers in that stations that people can have. And then you see where the sessions in which they interact with the internet on those computers. Aid received, that was a little odd one in there, but salary wages, some of those just efficiency metrics of what a full-time person like a clerk would be, assistant librarian, and then some of the overall wages of all the people on average who work in the library is about 31,000. And again, some of that doesn't account for the metro area, but we did pulls in Bonner Springs, Tonganoxie, and some of these other libraries that are in our area. So if we move on to, I do? Sorry, I should have been clicking. I'm sorry, I've moved on without you, I think. Would you just click for me? Yeah, and then go to the next one. I just talked about all that. I'm sorry. I talked about it with you not seeing it. Sorry. The 3-year financial projection, a lot of work on this. 55 hours a week. I might have mentioned that before. This does include 1 full-time librarian, 2 part-time aides, a part-time assistant, and some subs, volunteers, wherever it's going to be. Collection growth about 48,000, and we focus on core service, joining the Northeast Kansas Library System, and launching community. So our annual budget, as I projected, is going to be about that 300 plus thousand. Depending on how you pay your librarian, that's usually if they have a master's degree, but they have to have credentials, especially to belong and be accredited to this particular agency. We have to have a good librarian that has the credentials. So you pay them a little more.
They did say we didn't need a master's degree for the
No,
librarian.
you wouldn't. But if you do bring somebody in, that does have some of the, you're going to pay them a little more. Okay.
Yep.
Stabilization is year 2, as you can see. We just start breaking those down about the growth and to about 350,000 on the conservative level, and then maybe that depending on our activities of growing that full-time some sort of technology coordinator, a full-time assistant librarian, where you can send your librarian on vacation and you have somebody that's kind of the talent and has the knowledge, skills, and abilities to run it if you have vacancies or anything else. And then somebody that knows, again, who would be in control of all that technology. There's a lot of stuff happening, and your librarian may not have that particular skill, and you need to find somebody that does it. So you can see the 3rd-year projection. If you add another full-time employee, that's 421,000. Again, we thought anywhere the equivalent of 3.5 mils. Okay, right now we're 4.88, somewhere in there, 8.1. Yeah, so that's quite a bit of money, and as I mentioned, that's 500,000 plus is what the taxpayers pay to, based on that tax rate, into the Wyandotte County Library Board. Okay, and those are collected by Wyandotte County, and then there's a distribution. They set their own budgets and all that other stuff. So as you can see, the 3-year overview. I already moved on. Yeah, sorry. So that shows you that year 2, year 3 projection to 421, and then you can kind of see what the cores are. Maybe, and again, these are flexible. If we don't need a full-time staff member and we got everything covered, right, this can change. So the flexibility is where you build success in any plan, right? Be flexible. So costs will level out, but the startup cost is what we're really focusing on, and that is because it's a new library. We don't have a book, we don't have a computer, we don't have an overhead projector, these kinds of things. We don't have tables and chairs. So we're working on that, and our request was for that startup cost was $1.2 million. And there's some legitimacy to that request, Now, can I account for every stinking penny and whether that's enough or not enough or too much? It's pretty hard. But I think there's an over expectation that we deliver that, and maybe it's a stall tactic. I'm not sure because it's not going to be right. I'll give you an example. As soon as Ellen Foster gave her presentation, she showed pictures of a table and chairs. She just selected out of the blue, right? These are chairs you would find in a library. And immediately, oh, those are too costly, or those are not good ones. I like this over here, because you have 5 or 6 librarians in there, and every one of them has a different opinion, right, about how the library should be operated, how you should staff it. I got 2 emails from other people. It's like, hey, great presentation. But my strategy was to do this, is to look at what they did for Turner. Now, Turner made a request for the startup, right? They did have an existing library, but they were building up, and they made a request, and their request was funded. And so that amount of money was done, some number of years ago. So I took a 10-year inflationary projection, and it showed 65% inflation in that 10-year period, from their start day of 07 to our 2027 range, somewhere in there. Okay, so if for every 10,000, right, that's a 16,500, right? That's where you're at. That's the inflation. So our request at 1.2 was not far off if you inflated their request from then to today. So they're very close. They have a much smaller library. We're 3 times bigger than their library is, almost, right? And so I thought it was fair in just the overall calculations. But part of the criticism was, well, these are just proposal numbers and they're not the budget. And my goodness, I don't know how, if we go through the Northeast Kansas library system, if we are paying $16 a book, they may be able to get it for 12. So, but I have to budget 16, right? Because I don't know if we qualify for that, or if by the 2027, when we're really buying this stuff, isn't, inflation happens. Just think of COVID year, right? The thing went sky high. So I built those inflationary components and we zeroed them out. I didn't put 89 cents and that sort of thing. So that was somewhat of a criticism about how we presented this material. And again, I think there are a little bit of stall factors, and I'm not being overly critical. I think this was clear in those meetings and what we may have to overcome. But it's not my job. I'm politically aware of what's happening there, but it's not my job to be politically involved. So my job is to present facts, and I'm trying to put the best budget I can together and make sure that you're informed. As you saw in the budget presentation for 2025 into 2026, you saw it. We only budgeted $35,000 for the library piece right now, and we're already struggling to figure out how we're going to pay for this thing. What we want to be is no taxes by them and us doing the taxing, right? We don't have enough money to pay $330,000 for a library operation. We don't have it, right? There's no way to find it internally. We're going to have to do something, okay? So whether we stayed where we're at or where we're going to go revenue neutral, at some point you're going to have to climb up. We just don't have another revenue source. Now, this library will generate some fees here and there, but it's like everything else with the local government. We don't have, we offset revenue. We don't, right? The expenses through revenue are 100%. Never. They're just never are. This is not, we do business-like decisions, but this isn't a business where we make money, right? And so we try to keep the cost reasonable. So if it costs us $25 to run it, maybe they're only paying $10. And so we're supplementing that piece of it, right? And so that comes through our budgeting process. So with that, we have another meeting coming up. It's an exercise in futility in my mind. I'm not opposed to doing it. I've done the work, but I don't know how positive it really is for our 1.2 million. And I'll tell you why. Number one, there was a motion made and it's seconded for only 500,000 to be awarded for either this budget, or it was hard to convoluted to figure out, but it was only 500, and that ended in a tie, which means it failed. So essentially our first effort, 1.2 million, went to 500,000. And part of that argument was that's essentially the amount of money that we pay in. So the argument was, well, we pay this much money in there. Okay, we can award you what you pay in, kind of thing. But even that failed. Now there's one person missing from that. There's a vacancy, and there was I think a change of heart, maybe waiting for this money. I know the mayor has been doing some work behind the scenes and hopefully to influence the votes. You should be prepared, as in most things. Let's plan for the worst and hope for the best. That's reality, right? So what do we do in staffing and all this other operation. We know how we can handle that, but the startup cost, the technology, the books, the courier service, and all the things and belonging to those startup costs are pretty significant. And I think again our request for 1.2 million was fair, and I think justified. Certainly we can do that. But if that fails, I don't know. I think their resistance, number one, is to give money for a library that doesn't exist. There's one. Number two, we haven't started the building. What if we don't build it? They give us money, right? They don't really know, as I mentioned, their authority as far as how they can award money and that sort of thing, their budget authority. So they've got to figure that out through their attorney who attends those meetings. And hopefully they're seeking some legal advice on that, because I think they're in good standing that they could give us some money this year, but I would be happy if they would just vote to give it to us in their 2026 budget. I'd be satisfied with that. And that we could even set a date, for example, give it to us in June. And then at least we know, but they would vote for that, and then we would know that we can accept some money, $1, $1 million, whatever it might be, because who knows what month changes their mind. So we have some challenges. It's a pretty large web, quite frankly. And so we have some political activities that may have to be participated in to help us out. And then it's unfortunately had a vacancy that I think from previous meetings supported our effort, but it ended a tie and it failed. So that's where we're at. The reality is we need every bit of 500 to $1 million just to get started. Now 500, okay, we can squeeze that in, but it's really not enough, and we got to find other money. But one thing we can do is work ourselves into things. Hey, okay, we're just working with a smaller budget. We buy less stuff. Maybe the technology is we use Craco instead of Panasonic. I don't know, something that's maybe a little more economical, that sort of thing. So, but we want to be, when we open the doors, spring of 2027, we want to have a librarian on board that guides us and knows how to operate all of the machinery and all that stuff. So this is all a part of what we're trying to accomplish. And in fact, even as complex as the PD building is, this is probably the most complex piece of it because it's very expensive and the money is not there. It's that simple. So we have to find money, and we've already worked through some strategies to kind of rework the building and the cost there, but we need the 1.2 or something thereof. That's what we need. So with that, I'll stand for questions or whatever comments you might have.
I'll just give a little bit of optimism. We were only one vote away from getting our, the goal was, and as we talked about before, is potentially paying in for 2025 as an additional interlocal agreement that would end the end of 2025, since we still don't have our library, I'm sorry, 2026, since we don't still have that. And so the hope was to do a motion for 500,000 this year and then 500,000 2026, because that's what we paid in for those 2 years, basically. Missed it by one vote. And so while our city managers have politically involved,
Not involved,
but not
aware.
involved, that's where we can be and our constituents can be politically involved.
Yes.
And the meeting is September 16th. They're voting on our mill levy. They're taking our taxes every year. And the purpose of this board, as it's stated in their bylaws, is to provide services, library services to Wyandotte County residents, not KCK residents, not Piper residents, just Wyandotte County residents. That's what they've been collecting our tax dollars for years under that regulation. And so this is where the political engagement comes in. It would be a great time for each of us to reach out to those board members, show up to the meeting, and advocate for these funds for our community. And so I really encourage everybody to do that. We were one vote off. And so it's exhausting being there. If anyone would, well.
The mayor and two, please. Not more than mayor and two.
Everyone can email.
Yeah, you can email, but
It's
if
an
you want
open
to attend
meeting.
in person.
Well, we won't be discussing anything.
Hopefully not.
I don't know.
You all can attend events, conferences, other public events that in your individual capacity, even your official capacity as an individual member of the board, as long as there's not interactive communication. So you don't say something like, I don't know,
make it very,
Yeah.
so.
I don't
And
get-
that's if
it's a
we
timeline
get
here.
that many to show up, but that would be wonderful if that was,
Yes.
if we had that many show
Yeah,
up. Just,
email.
it's a good opportunity to reach out and advocate for this, for our community, to see, once again, some sort of, use of our tax dollars invested in our part of the county. So,
I would say on legal, our legal standing is they don't have the authority without us agreeing to tax us in 2026. They have acknowledged that. It's very clear in the law, and they've been given proper notice. We've done legally our steps. Now, could they challenge it? Surely they could and just tie things up. And so far, I emailed and copied our city attorney. If there's anything that's an obstacle here, let's talk about it to their legal. If you have some concerns, let's get this on the table so we don't run into this later on. With crickets, there's been no response.
and if anyone has questions, not to prolong our meeting this evening, feel free to shoot me an email or call. I'd be happy to answer those, and I'm sure our city managers as
Yes.
well. So, anything else for this evening?
We do, just for clarification of what's happening, there, 110th Street in the development area, the sidewalk was breached towards our stormwater drains. Now, we're in the fact-finding piece of that. There was no permit issue. If you understand the permitting process, somebody who wants to do something, a curb cut, or, fix a piece of the road, put a driveway in, they file for a permit, then they submit the plans and they do these things, okay? And so that's how the city knows that, okay, you're gonna be doing this work, and we investigate it, engineering and that sort of thing, the law, regulation, zoning, that sort of thing. We didn't know about it because that process was once again not utilized. And I get the reason why, is they believe they have all their permits from Water Springs, because that property is Water Springs. However, the property they're digging in is in the city of Edwardsville. Now, that is a stormwater consideration. We're doing fact finding, and then should they submit for a permit, they're on a cease and desist now. Should they submit for a permit, we'll use the facts that we found, discovered, to make a decision whether or not to issue them a permit.
Is there any sort of fine when somebody?
To do something without a permit is a violation of the code. Now, whether there's some specific provisions, I would have to look as is that if you violate the code unless it states otherwise, it is somewhat of a misdemeanor. It's a low class. It's a municipal court type thing. Number one, who do you fine? Who is it that we go write the ticket to? That sort of thing. But we could maybe, invoke some sort of civil measures and make them repair it. So if it needs repaired, they will certainly do that. I would just keep in mind, across the street, we invested heavily to repairing stormwater and improving drainage in that area because we didn't quite get it right with the road. So that's also part of the fact finding. Be patient, and we'll let you know the outcome of that if they request a permit.
Thank you. Councilman Mullen. Councilman Everhart.
No comment.
Councilman Millet.
Oh, it's a long night. Margaret, I love you. Public Works buildings look great.
Good.
Really looking good, I think. It looks like everything's rolling along really good on that. I still have to commend Brian on what he does with Public Works. As well as the other departments. Richland Progress, they got, what are the big, is that water lines?
Water.
Water
EPU
lines
water.
going in up
Yep.
there?
Got to move it.
It's rolling, yeah.
Yep. Be brand new.
I was gonna ask Brian, anything going on with pickleball?
Yep. Starts next week.
Start converting that over to playground?
Yeah, we've got all the tasks aligned, the lights, the electric, we have to work with Evergy. The color scheme, I think we settled on that.
What's the colors decided on?
It's gonna be blue, right?
Like professional?
Like a bluish.
Blue, right? Yeah.
Bluestone.
Yes.
No pink,
No pink,
no red.
no red. Red fades to the worst.
Then the other thing, I'm gonna mention it, that a young man named Craig Carberry passed away. He was pretty big with, not so much with Edwardsville, but with all of the communities around here. His parents were involved with the library at the high school. That's just kind of more of a personal thing. I think we need to, our website people, I think we need to have them review our website, get it updated. I don't think the council has think there's a lot of things that could be updated on our website. And they're kind of look around on this. I think it just needs some updating.
You're referring to the names and contact information.
Yeah, pretty
Yep.
much. Yeah, Christie's not on there.
Yeah, we need to update that.
There's some other things on there. If you just kind of look through it, review it, it's above what I know how to do. If it's above me, it's above other people too. That's all I have. Thank you for all your work on everything that's going on.
Councilman Shriver?
I would like to second Councilmember Malat on all the departments, all their hard work. I did mention it earlier, but all the hard work on trying to tighten those budgets doesn't go unnoticed because it's a tough job sitting up here with what we have to look at and vote on. Take care of our employees and take care of the residents at the same time. It's a tough job, but anyway, there was talk earlier, I believe it was Mr. Johnson mentioned about a no leash dog park or no leash park. I've been on the Parks Board here since 2002, I believe. So I know several years ago we sent out when we were talking about the Riverfront Park and the remodel, I think it was 6, 7, 8 years ago, we sent out a questionnaire to all the residents. And we got back, a few hundred. Sorry, that was disappointing in itself. But anyway, that was on the list of, okay, what do you want? Of course, everybody wanted a pool, splash pads, this and that. So, and there was very little interest in that, which we were looking at that. It's fairly cheap, but there is a little bit more involved than, just letting your dogs run down here. So I'll present it to the board. We have a meeting tomorrow night, Wednesday night. And we'll explore that. So, like I said, there's a lot more involved, so we can take a look at that. I think I'd asked you for maybe a small report on the numbers on the trash collection numbers, but you can do that next time.
Oh, yeah. It's,
Just-
we'll have a delinquency report. We just finished our billing.
Right,
And
right, I know.
You don't want to run the report while there's pending payments
Right.
where it looks skewed.
Just
so
an idea
we're waiting.
where we were, where we are,
Yep.
because I hats off to you. I know you've worked hard on that. Do we have a contract coming up pretty soon or
Yes,
discussions?
it is, River's been assigned, the clerk has given him all the paperwork to go through the RFP, kind of look at what we might want to change in that particular piece of it to make sure we get the right. And then we're getting on a list of who we want to directly send it to. Of course, we'll publish that, go from there. But yeah, we have to have somebody in place by January 1. So we'll be working on that over the next few meetings, so October, November, having that done.
And then obviously there was talk or request of a street sign, speed sign, whatever the case may be. You'll look into that as the city.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll gotta see the ordinance. I mean, he mentioned the number, and I gotta make sure that that's what we post.
Right.
And then get Brian to put one up.
Okay. That's all I have.
Councilman Adcox? No comment. A reminder, we have Edwardsville Mobile Pantry coming up Saturday, so any families in need can sign up. Registration's open until Wednesday. City staff, I believe Chantal's put out a request for volunteers for the Potato Festival coming up. And so if anyone's wanting to serve in that capacity, I think we're offering lunch from a food truck if you serve at least 2 hours. So that'll be great. Just to follow up on potentially getting a couple of no parkings on sidewalks or trails, that's become an issue again very recently. One of the residents asked about the percentages listed on the notice from the county. The percentage lines up with that individual entity, and so and then the numbers correspond to that. Last I think I have on here is if Doug wouldn't mind reaching out and looking into the Kansas City, what's the trash company? KC Disposal. KC Disposal. I believe that the mobile home park now uses them as well. So while we are yeah, that was just a couple months ago, I believe. And so since we're reissuing our contract, it might be worth looking into if it's beneficial to all to bring them in. So it'd be
Yeah.
good timing on
Now,
that.
they're a commercial account, and we purposely, over the years, decided not to pursue commercial accounts with a sole provider. The problem with that is you've got 7 different trash trucks running up and down the same roads. That's the first, right? And, you know, who's responsible for this leaking trash and this kind of thing? You know, who is a citizen and or company who owns property here? Who do they complain to? They got to figure out who that is. And I always thought that was maybe where we missed the boat, quite frankly, and that those rates are different, of course, you know, but I think this would be the time that we, by ordinance, no different than we have done with our KC disposal residential, that we add commercial. This would be the time to do that. So if there's some interest in doing that, one thing about it is there'll be less trucks. Right? It'll be the same going, you know, right? The same company, not 5 or 6 of them, but 1 or 2 of them. That would be the real advantage there. So if there's interest in doing that, we'll certainly can.
Is that where we ask everybody if we?
Yeah, we direct it. Yeah, absolutely. No different than.
Okay, just
right.
wanted to make sure.
No different than the trash can. You know,
Right.
right? We went to containers. The council, as a policy body, set that as a regulation. Set that out. Trash container. And this is the person who's going to supply it. And this is the bill.
I think if we're going to do that, I'd like to see both, whether it's commercial all across the board, or at least just bringing in mobile home on the residential, because they use the individual bins as well, and just bring the information back to us would be great.
I can say they're a commercial account by just by pure nature.
Right, but the difference is commercial all across the city mandating versus an opt-in from a commercial account to be a part of ours. So, yeah.
They come and participate in our day anyway.
All right, have a great night.